At Cramer Law Group, we get a lot of people who give us calls who have concerns that their civil rights have been violated. And sometimes that is relevant to what we do as an employment attorney, and sometimes it isn't. So let's talk about times where civil rights is and isn't an employment-related matter. So as an employment attorney, one of the most prevalent forms of wrongful termination that we see is discrimination. Person was fired for a discriminatory reason. And the law that covers that type of discrimination is Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It's a federal law. Now, many states have adopted mirrored-like laws. Here in Illinois, the Illinois Human Rights Act is essentially the same thing as Title VII, but just on a state level. There are differences, but for the most part, it's mirrored. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 doesn't just cover employment-related matters. It covers a lot of civil rights. That's where you find Title IX. That's where you find other forms of like discrimination, maybe in housing or at a workplace or a business. But employment attorneys really just focus on Title VII. So when someone calls me to say that they think they've been discriminated against by a potential landlord, or they've gone into a store and they felt like they've been discriminated against, they called an agency and felt like they've suffered from some sort of discrimination, that doesn't really apply to an employment attorney. Now, I'm a civil rights attorney for sure, because I regularly deal in violations of civil rights, but each title, each act, each provision may have its own precedent in law, may have ancillary laws or amendments that are important to know, and as employment attorneys, we may not know them. So I tend to refer those people to civil rights attorneys, and believe it or not, that's the difference. Civil rights attorneys are often the sort of people who, yes, might represent somebody, say, who's disabled and is trying to get into a building, but the building doesn't have the appropriate access, or who has been unfairly imprisoned. Those are civil rights attorneys. They cover a broad swath of things really outside of the employment setting, or maybe like the school setting, because those two places have their own sets of laws. But then once someone calls me and they feel that they've been discriminated against in their workplace, that is in fact a civil rights violation. And so Cramer Law Group covers that. Many civil rights attorneys don't do employment law, and employment law lawyers don't do civil rights law because of the difficulties associated with knowing both types of law, and really the years of experience you need to be able to identify the sort of claims a person might have, the sort of defenses that the employer might have. All of that is very relevant when it comes to who you're picking for a civil rights attorney. I think that also helps delineate employment attorneys from what HR does too. Now, if you're an HR rep, you've probably been trained in a lot of laws to look out for in the work setting. So for example, if you're an HR rep, maybe your job is to manage personnel files and manage disputes in the company and ensure that company is in compliance and field complaints. But you've probably also been trained to look out for certain things like discrimination, retaliation, FMLA, these sort of things. But as an HR rep, you're probably not drilled down, focused in on employment law like an employment lawyer is, because you wear many hats as an HR rep. For example, as an employment lawyer, our job is to stay current as the law changes, and then turn to our employer clients and tell them sort of maybe like what changes they need to make to a handbook or to a policy, or maybe put up this new poster on their wall because a new state law has required them to do so. Certainly an employment lawyer's job is to stay current, because it's a pretty fast-moving area of law. Let's not forget that most people in this country are employed. So in one way or another, my job applies to them. That's a little different than a lot of other types of law, whereas an individual person may never need a personal injury attorney in their life, God willing. They may never have any sort of commercial dispute with some other person or entity. It's altogether possible that a person doesn't need a lawyer ever in their life. But most people are employed. Most people are being told their rights at their job. And normally that job is being told those rights because of someone like me. In many ways, where HR will kind of handle the day-to-day aspects of a job, an employment attorney is dealing more with specific subset of human resources, which is to ensure that the company is always in compliance with the laws and always ensuring that if a complaint is being made about some sort of violation of the law, that they are handling it diligently, appropriately.